I woke up to a diesel engine roaring outside my window. A tow barge was positioning beside my houseboat, the home my grandfather earned mooring rights to in 1952 after fighting in WWII. On the shore, Barbara, the HOA president in her pink blazer, stood with her arms crossed and a smile that said she'd already won. She'd ignored my deed, ignored the court warnings, ignored 70 years of family legacy. In 10 minutes, my $400,000 home would be an impound and I'd be homeless. She had the lawyers, the money, and the entire community terrified into silence. But she made one fatal mistake. Hidden in my grandfather's military files was a document that didn't just protect my boat, it gave me legal control over every dock on that lake, including hers. What happened next obliterated her empire and united an entire town against her. Watch until the end because the courtroom finale will leave you speechless. And comment below, where are you watching this from? I'm reading every single one tonight. The first thing you hear at dawn on Clearwater Lake is silence, not the dead kind, the alive kind. Water lapping against the hull, a loon calling across the mist. Wind moving through 200 feet of Douglas fir like a whisper you can't quite catch. I'm standing on the deck of my houseboat with coffee in my hand, watching the sun crack open the mountains to the east. Gold light spills down the ridges. The lake turns from black to silver to that impossible shade of blue that doesn't exist anywhere else. This is home, not some rental, not some vacation spot. Home. My grandfather built the mooring rights to this spot in 1952. He came back from the war with shrapnel still in his leg and a need to be somewhere quiet, somewhere clean. He helped construct the original harbor, poured concrete for the docks, filed the paperwork with the county when everything was still done with handshakes and signed letters. When he died, he left it to me. The houseboat itself is custom, 42 feet long, solar panels on the roof, a garden where I grow tomatoes and basil. Inside, it's tight but perfect, wood floors, a small kitchen, a desk where I work as a maritime consultant. Everything I need, nothing I don't. I've been here 5 years. Every morning, same routine, coffee, sunrise. Then I wave to the other boat owners, Sam on his fishing trawler, the Millers on their old cruiser, a couple of artists on a converted barge. We're a tight crew, we help each other with repairs, share dock space, trade fish for vegetables. It's the kind of place where people still look out for each other. Or it was. Things started changing 2 years ago when they broke ground on Emerald Shores Estates. Luxury homes, million-dollar lakefront properties with manicured lawns rolling down to private docks, floor-to-ceiling windows, 3-car garages. The kind of place where people weekend. We didn't think much of it at first. Live and let live, right? But then the HOA showed up. I first saw her on a Tuesday morning in early spring. A golf cart rolled up to the community dock and out stepped a woman in her mid-50s. Blonde bob, pink blazer, sunglasses that cost more than my monthly mooring fee. She had a clipboard in one hand and a phone in the other. 2 other people flanked her, board members I'd guess. They wore the same expression like they were inspecting a health code violation. She stood there for a long moment scanning the docks. Her eyes settled on my houseboat, not a glance, a stare. Like she was calculating something. Then she started walking toward me. I set my coffee down. "Morning," I called out. She didn't return the greeting. She stopped at the edge of my deck, looked up at me and smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that comes before bad news. "We need to talk about your situation," she said. My situation? I felt my stomach tighten. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Barbara Thornton, president of the Emerald Shores HOA, and as of last month we manage this entire waterfront under a new county ordinance." She said it like it was fact, like I should have known. "Managed how?" Her smile sharpened. "We'll discuss that. But first, I need to inform you that your vessel is in violation of several codes." I stared at her. "What codes?" She tapped her clipboard. "Aesthetic standards, property value protection, waterfront preservation." I didn't understand. "Not yet, but I felt it, that cold drop in your gut when you realize someone's about to try and take something from you." "I've been here 5 years," I said slowly. "My grandfather secured mooring rights in 1952. Barbara's expression didn't change. "Those old arrangements don't apply anymore." And just like that, everything shifted. Barbara didn't wait for me to respond. She pulled a folded document from her clipboard and held it out like a warrant. "This is a formal citation, $500 payable within 14 days. I took it. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. The document had the Emerald Shores HOA letterhead, official-looking seals. Legal language I didn't fully understand. At the top in bold, notice of violation. "Violation of what?" I asked. "Your rooftop garden," she said, gesturing to the tomatoes and herbs growing in raised beds on my upper deck. "Unsightly vegetation, not permitted under waterfront aesthetic guidelines." I almost laughed, almost. "You're fining me for growing tomatoes. I'm fining you for failing to maintain approved visual standards. This is a luxury lake community now, Mr. Harrison. We have codes." She wasn't joking. I scanned the rest of the citation. It got worse. They wanted me to repaint my houseboat in approved neutral tones, beige, white, or light gray. My boat was forest green. It blended with the trees. I liked it. And the final demand, the one that made my blood go cold, relocate to the transient vessel area within 30 days. The transient area, I looked up. That's the exposed section by the inlet. No utilities, no shelter. Barbara nodded. Correct, it's for short-term vessels. Yours doesn't meet the residency standards for permanent mooring in the primary harbor. I've been here 5 years. That was before the ordinance. My grandfather's mooring rights are not legally binding under current county regulations. She cut me off cleanly like she'd rehearsed this. Mr. Harrison, I'm trying to be reasonable. You have options. Comply with the aesthetic requirements and apply for a residency waiver or relocate voluntarily. But if you do neither, she paused, let the silence hang. We will have your vessel towed and impounded. The words hit like a fist. Towed, impounded. I looked past her at the other boats. Sam was on his deck pretending to coil rope. The Millers were inside their cabin, curtains drawn. Nobody was making eye contact. They'd already gotten to them. You can't do this, I said. Barbara smiled again, that same cold, calculated smile. We already have, Mr. Harrison. You have 14 days to pay the fine and begin compliance. After that, we proceed with removal. She turned and walked back toward her golf cart. Her board members followed like trained dogs. I stood there holding the citation, feeling my pulse hammer in my temples. 14 days. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my deck with the lights off, staring out at the lake. The moon was full, turning the water silver. Mountains stood like sentries in the distance. This wasn't just property, this was legacy. My grandfather taught me to tie a bowline knot right here on this dock. He taught me how to read the wind, how to navigate by stars, how to respect the water. When he got sick, we scattered his ashes from this exact spot. I wasn't letting some HOA president in a pink blazer take that from me. I went below deck and dragged out the storage boxes. Old files, decades of paperwork. Dusty banker boxes my grandfather had kept organized with military precision. I started digging. Permits, letters, blueprints, receipts. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew it was here. It had to be. Because my grandfather didn't do anything halfway, if he secured this mooring, he did it right. And somewhere in these boxes was proof. I tore through 3 boxes before I found it, a yellowed envelope, thick paper. County seal embossed on the corner. Inside was a deed, dated April 1952. I unfolded it carefully. The paper crackled, ink faded but still legible. Transfer of surplus government property. Harbor Master's Office, Clearwater Lake. My heart started pounding. My grandfather hadn't just secured mooring rights. He'd purchased the Harbor Master's Office. It was a small building, maybe 400 square feet, sitting on shore near the main dock. For years, I'd assumed it was county property. It had been used as storage, a maintenance shed, basically ignored. But according to this deed, my grandfather bought it as surplus after the war. And attached to the deed was a clause. Perpetual mooring rights and harbor access for family vessels in designated slip Aminus 7. That was my slip, my exact mooring spot. I kept reading. Grantor conveys regulatory authority over said harbor zone as defined by navigable waterway boundaries. Wait. Regulatory authority? I read it again. Then again. The Harbor Master's Office wasn't just a building, it was a title, a position. And whoever owned the office held legal authority over vessel regulations, mooring assignments, and waterfront ordinances within the designated harbor zone. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus. He picked up on the third ring, groggy. Jake, it's 2 in the morning. I need Sarah, your wife, the real estate attorney. What's going on? Just please. I need her to look at something. He heard the urgency in my voice. I'll have her call you first thing. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat on my deck with the deed in my lap, watching the stars wheel overhead. If this document meant what I thought it meant, Barbara Thornton had just made a very big mistake. Sarah called me at 7 a.m. I met her at a coffee shop in town, a small place with wooden tables and windows facing the lake. I slid the deed across the table. She read it in silence. Her expression shifted. Jake, she said slowly, do you understand what this is? I think so, but I need you to tell me I'm not crazy. She tapped the clause about regulatory authority. This deed predates the HOA by 70 years. It includes riparian rights, legal authority over the adjacent waterway. The Harbor Master's Office, even if unused, still holds regulatory power under state maritime law. Meaning Barbara's HOA has no jurisdiction over your vessel. They can't fine you, they can't relocate you, they can't touch you. I felt a wave of relief so intense I almost laughed. So I'm protected. Sarah looked up, her eyes were sharp. Jake, you're more than protected. What do you mean? She leaned forward. If you own the Harbor Master's Office and that office holds regulatory authority over the harbor zone, then you don't just have power over your own boat. She paused. You have power over every boat on this lake, including the HOA's docks. The coffee shop went quiet. I stared at her. Are you serious? Dead serious. Barbara's docks, the ones attached to Emerald Shores, they were built 5 years ago, right? Yeah. Did they get a permit from the harbor master's office? I shook my head slowly. I don't think so. The office hasn't been active in decades. Sarah smiled, not a friendly smile, a lawyer's smile. Then those docks are illegal. I requested a meeting with the HOA board. They agreed, probably thought I was coming to beg. The meeting was held at the Emerald Shores Clubhouse, a sprawling building with vaulted ceilings, leather furniture, and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my houseboat. I walked in with Sarah. Barbara sat at the head of a long conference table. Red blazer today, hair perfect. 4 board members flanked her, 2 men in polo shirts, 2 women in business casual. They looked at me like I was an annoyance. Barbara folded her hands. Mr. Harrison, I assume you're here to discuss compliance. I didn't sit down. Actually, I'm here to discuss your compliance. Her smile tightened. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out the deed. She slid it across the polished table. Mr. Harrison owns the harbor master's office. This deed, filed in 1952, grants him perpetual mooring rights in Slip Aminus 7 and regulatory authority over the Clearwater Lake Harbor Zone. Barbara picked up the document. Scanned it, her jaw clenched. This is outdated. It's recorded with the county, Sarah said calmly. It predates your HOA by 70 years, and under state maritime law, the harbor master's office retains regulatory authority over all vessels and docking structures within the designated zone. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. What are you saying? I leaned forward. I'm saying you have no authority over my houseboat. You can't find me, you can't relocate me, you can't tow me. Barbara's face flushed. This is absurd. We've already filed a quiet title action with the county, Sarah continued. And we've notified the State Maritime Board. If you proceed with towing Mr. Harrison's vessel, you'll be committing theft. You'll also be trespassing on property under his jurisdiction. The room went dead silent. Barbara stood abruptly, her chair scraped against the floor. You think you can intimidate us? Her voice was rising. You're a squatter on a glorified raft. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I stayed calm. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, someone who thought they could bully me off my own property. Your property? She was almost shouting now. You live on a floating shack, you're an eyesore, you're ruining our investment. Sarah stood. Miss Thornton, if you continue harassing my client, we'll pursue legal action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Do you understand? Barbara's hands were shaking. She pointed at me. You will regret this. Then she turned and stormed out. The board members sat frozen. One of them finally spoke. Is this real? Sarah nodded. Very real. We left. Outside, the sun was setting over the lake. The water glowed orange and pink. I felt lighter than I had in weeks, but Sarah grabbed my arm. Jake, this isn't over. What do you mean? Barbara doesn't back down. She's going to escalate. Let her. Sarah's expression was serious. I mean it. She has money. She has lawyers. She's going to come at you hard. I looked out at the lake, at my houseboat floating peacefully in the distance. Then I'll be ready. 2 days later, I woke to the sound of diesel engines, not the distant hum of a fishing boat, close, loud, right outside. I stumbled onto my deck, heart already pounding. A commercial tow barge was positioning beside my houseboat. Massive, industrial, a crane arm extending like a mechanical claw. 2 workers in orange vests moved around the deck checking cables. And on the shoreline dock, arms crossed, stood Barbara. Pink scarf, sunglasses, that same cold smile. My pulse exploded. I grabbed my phone, called Sarah. Straight to voicemail, called the county sheriff's office. We have a dispatcher en route, the operator said. Stay calm. Stay calm. They were about to tow my home. I ran to the edge of my deck. Hey, what the hell are you doing? One of the workers looked up. We have an HOA work order. Vessel removal for code violations. You have no authority. Lady on the dock says otherwise. I turned to Barbara. She was on her phone, not even looking at me. The crane arm swung toward my mooring lines. My brain went into overdrive. If they disconnected me, if they hooked the cables, it was over. By the time the sheriff arrived, I'd be halfway to impound. I grabbed a dock pole, solid fiberglass, 6 feet long, and stepped to the edge of my deck. Touch my lines and I'm pressing charges for theft. The worker hesitated. Man, I'm just doing my job. Your job is illegal. I have a deed. I have mooring rights. He looked at his partner. They both looked at Barbara. She shouted across the water. Proceed. The worker reached for my mooring line. I raised the pole, not threatening, just present. Don't. He stopped, then sirens. A sheriff's patrol boat cut across the lake, lights flashing red and blue against the morning mist. Deputy Coleman, grizzled 50s ex-Navy, I'd seen him around the marina for years. He pulled alongside the barge. What's going on here? Barbara stepped forward. Deputy, this vessel is in violation of county ordinances. We're executing a lawful removal. Coleman looked at me. I held up my phone. I have a deed that says this is my property. I have mooring rights that predate her HOA. She has no authority to tow me. Coleman's eyes narrowed. Miss Thornton, do you have a court order? Barbara's jaw tightened. We have an HOA work order. That's not the same thing. Deputy, this man is obstructing. Ma'am, Coleman's voice went flat. If there's a legal dispute over property rights, no one's towing anything until a judge sorts it out. He turned to the barge crew. Stand down. The workers looked relieved. They powered down the crane. Barbara's face went red. This is me preventing a potential theft, Coleman said. You want to remove his boat, get a court order. He looked at me. You okay? I nodded, adrenaline still screaming through my veins. Yeah. Thanks, Coleman motored away. The barge crew packed up and left. Barbara stood on the dock for a long moment staring at me, then she turned and walked away, but I knew this was just the beginning. Barbara couldn't remove me legally, so she decided to destroy me socially. Within 3 days, rumors started spreading. I heard them at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the coffee shop in town. That guy on the houseboat is a squatter. His boat's a health hazard. He's harassing homeowners. Someone posted photos of my houseboat on the Emerald Shores Facebook group. The captions were brutal. This is what's ruining our property values. Floating trash in our lake. Why is the county allowing this? I didn't have Facebook, but people sent me screenshots. The comments were worse. People I'd never met calling me a leech. A freeloader, a blight. Barbara had turned me into the villain. I started getting stares around town, cold looks. A woman in line at the grocery store actually moved away from me. Then Ted, the marina owner, pulled me aside one afternoon. He looked uncomfortable. Jake, man, I need to talk to you. What's up? He scratched his neck. She's been putting pressure on me. My stomach dropped. What kind of pressure? She says if I keep renting you dock utilities, water, power, she'll pull her members' boat slips. That's 30 slips, Jake. I can't afford to lose that. I felt the ground shift under me. Ted, I've been paying my fees. I've never caused problems. I know, but she's got leverage. He looked miserable. I'm sorry, man, I really am. 2 days later, my shore power was disconnected. I ran on solar after that. Rationed water, stopped using the marina showers. Other boat owners started avoiding me. The Millers, an older couple I'd helped repair their engine last summer, apologized quietly one evening. We support you, Jake. But we can't say anything publicly. Barbara threatened to revoke our guest mooring permits. Even Sam, my closest friend on the dock, stopped waving. I was isolated, alone. One night, I sat on my deck under the stars and felt the full weight of it. The lake was still beautiful. Moonlight shimmered on the water. Mountains stood dark against the sky, but it felt different now, tainted. I thought about giving up. Selling the houseboat, moving somewhere else, starting over. Maybe Barbara had won. Then my phone buzzed. Email from Sarah. Subject, you need to see this. I opened it. Jake, I found something in the county archives. Call me immediately. My heart started pounding again. I called. She picked up on the first ring. Did you read the full deed clause about the harbor zone? I thought I did. Read it again. The navigable waterway boundaries. It's not just your slip, Jake. What do you mean? Her voice was electric. The harbor zone includes the entire lake. Sarah's words echoed in my head. The harbor zone includes the entire lake. I stared at the deed again. Squinted at the faded ink under my desk lamp. Regulatory authority over all commercial and recreational watercraft within the designated harbor zone, defined as the full navigable extent of Clearwater Lake. The full navigable extent. Not just my slip, not just the main harbor, the entire lake, every boat, every dock, every mooring, including Emerald Shores. Sarah, I said slowly, what does this mean? It means you're not just a boat owner defending his property, Jake. You're the harbor master. My mind was spinning. I don't understand. You have regulatory authority, you can issue mooring permits, you can enforce safety codes, you can inspect docks for compliance. She paused, and Barbara's docks. The ones the HOA built 5 years ago, what about them? Did they ever get a permit from the harbor master's office? I thought about it. The office had been dormant for decades. My grandfather was the last active harbor master, and after he retired, the county just stopped enforcing it. No, I said, I don't think so. Sarah's voice sharpened. Then those docks are illegal, Jake. Every single one. The room tilted. I stood up, paced my small cabin. The implications were massive. So I can, shut them down? You can demand they apply for permits. You can conduct inspections. You can enforce maritime safety regulations. And if they don't comply, she didn't finish, she didn't have to. I walked out onto my deck. The lake stretched before me, dark and vast under the stars. Across the water, the Emerald Shores docks glowed with decorative lighting. Expensive yachts bobbed gently. Sprinklers hissed across their perfect lawns. Barbara had everything: money, power, lawyers, an entire community afraid to stand against her. But she didn't have this. I thought about my grandfather, a man who came home from war and built something with his hands, who respected the law, who did things the right way. He didn't cut corners, he didn't bully, he earned his place. And now, 70 years later, his work was about to protect his grandson, I made a decision. I wasn't going to destroy Barbara, I was going to offer her a way out. One chance. One opportunity to do the right thing after that. The gloves came off, I called Sarah back. Draft a letter, official harbor master letterhead, notify the HOA that their docks are under regulatory review. They have 30 days to apply for retroactive permits or face removal proceedings. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Jake, are you sure this is going to escalate everything? I'm sure she's not going to take this well. I know she has resources, she could drag this out for years. Let her try, Sarah exhaled. All right. I'll draft it tonight. I hung up, stood on my deck in the darkness. The wind moved through the pines. Water lapped against the hull. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt since Barbara showed up, control. The next morning, I printed the letter on official harbor master stationery. Letterhead I found in my grandfather's old files, still crisp and formal. I hand-delivered it to Barbara's house. Her mansion sat on 2 acres of prime lakefront property, white columns, wraparound porch, a 3-car garage with doors that probably cost more than most people's cars. I rang the doorbell. Barbara answered wearing a white blouse and tailored slacks. Her blonde bob was perfect. When she saw me, her expression curdled. What do you want? I handed her the envelope. This is a courtesy notice. As acting harbor master, I'm conducting a regulatory review of all docking structures on Clearwater Lake. Your HOA's docks were constructed without proper permits. You have 30 days to apply for retroactive authorization or they'll be subject to removal. Her face went pale, then red. She tore open the envelope. Her hands trembled as she scanned the letter. You have no authority. I have a deed that says otherwise. I have a lawyer who agrees, and I have a county sheriff who's already reviewed the paperwork. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped to something dangerous. You're making a huge mistake. I'm offering you a solution, Barbara. Drop your campaign against my houseboat, acknowledge my mooring rights, and I'll approve your dock permits. We both walk away. Her eyes were blazing. You think you can threaten me? I have connections. I have money. I will bury you in legal fees. I will destroy your reputation. I will make your life a living hell. I didn't flinch. 30 days, Barbara. I turned and walked back to my truck. Behind me, the door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. Barbara didn't negotiate. She declared war. 1 week later, a process server showed up at my houseboat. I was served with a lawsuit. Emerald Shores HOA versus Jake Harrison. The complaint was 40 pages long, legal jargon I could barely parse, but the gist was clear. They claimed my deed was fraudulent. They claimed the harbor master's office was a legal fiction with no modern authority. They claimed my actions constituted harassment, defamation, and tortious interference with their property rights. They were suing me for $250,000 in damages. My stomach dropped. I called Sarah immediately. They're trying to scare you, she said. This is a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. They want you to fold under pressure. Can they win? No, but they can make it expensive. She wasn't wrong. I had to hire her officially now. Retainer fees, court costs, filing fees. I drained my savings account, $15,000. Gone in a week, but Barbara wasn't done. She filed complaints with every agency she could find. The county zoning board, the state environmental protection agency, the Coast Guard. She claimed my houseboat was polluting the lake. It wasn't. I had a certified waste management system, inspected annually. She claimed I was violating residential zoning laws. I wasn't. My mooring rights predated zoning ordinances. She claimed I was operating a commercial vessel without proper licensing. Completely false. Every agency showed up to inspect. County officials with clipboards, environmental techs taking water samples, Coast Guard officers checking my documentation. I spent 2 weeks proving compliance, showing permits, demonstrating systems, answering the same questions over and over. It was exhausting, demoralizing. Every morning I woke up wondering what new attack was coming. One night I sat alone on my deck staring at the lake. The stars were out. The water was calm, but I felt like I was drowning. Maybe Barbara was right. Maybe I couldn't win. Maybe I should just sell the houseboat, take whatever I could get, move on with my life, start over somewhere else. Then my phone buzzed, text from Marcus. Don't quit, brother, you've got this. Remember Kandahar? I stared at the message. Kandahar, Afghanistan, 2009. Our unit held a position against overwhelming odds for 3 days. No resupply, no reinforcements, just us and the mission. We didn't quit, we held the line. I looked back at the lake, at my houseboat, at the home my grandfather built rights to 70 years ago. I wasn't quitting now. I texted Marcus back. I remember. Then I called Sarah. What do we need to win this? Her voice was firm. A court date and evidence that your deed is legitimate. We have the deed. We need more. We need to prove the harbor master's office still holds authority under state law. We need precedent. We need documentation. Then let's find it. We spent the next week in county archives, courthouse basements, state maritime records. Sarah pulled statutes, found case law, built our defense piece by piece. And slowly the picture became clear. The harbor master's office wasn't some relic, it was codified in state law, it had never been officially dissolved, which meant it still existed, and I owned it. 2 weeks later we got our court date. The hearing was scheduled for October 15th. I marked it on my calendar, 1 month away, 1 month to prepare, 1 month until I faced Barbara in front of a judge. I wasn't scared anymore, I was ready. The courthouse was a historic building in the center of town. Marble floors, wooden pews, high ceilings that made every sound echo. I arrived early with Sarah. Barbara showed up with 3 lawyers, all in tailored suits. All carrying leather briefcases. They looked like they cost $1,000 an hour. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. Barbara didn't look at me once. At 9 a.m. sharp, the bailiff called us to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Brennan. Judge Brennan entered from her chambers, mid-60s, silver hair pulled back, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She sat, adjusted her glasses, and opened the case file. Emerald Shores HOA versus Jake Harrison. Let's begin. Barbara's lead attorney stood, tall, polished, confident. Your Honor, the plaintiff respectfully requests dismissal of the defendant's counterclaim and enforcement of HOA regulations. The defendant's so-called deed is 70 years old and was never properly registered under modern county systems. Judge Brennan cut him off. Counselor, was the deed filed with the county recorder in 1952? The attorney hesitated. Yes, Your Honor, but then it's valid. The lawyer's jaw tightened. Your Honor, the property in question, a so-called harbor master's office, has been defunct for decades. It holds no modern regulatory authority. Judge Brennan turned to Sarah. Miss Carter, your response? Sarah stood, calm, precise. Your Honor, the harbor master's office was established under state maritime law in 1948. That law has never been repealed. The office was designated to manage vessel regulations, mooring permits, and waterfront ordinances within the Clearwater Lake Harbor Zone. She handed documents to the bailiff. We've provided state statutes, historical records, and precedent cases showing that dormant regulatory offices retain authority unless formally dissolved by the state legislature. The harbor master's office was never dissolved. Judge Brennan reviewed the documents. The courtroom was silent. Barbara's lawyer stood again. Your Honor, even if the office technically exists, it cannot supersede modern HOA governance. Can't it? Judge Brennan looked up. The deed predates the HOA by 70 years. State maritime law supersedes county ordinances, and Mr. Harrison's mooring rights are explicitly protected under riparian law. She closed the file. I'm ruling in favor of the defendant. The deed is valid. Mr. Harrison's mooring rights are protected. The harbor master's office retains regulatory authority under state law. Barbara's face went white. Furthermore, Judge Brennan continued, I'm dismissing the plaintiff's lawsuit with prejudice. Miss Thornton, your HOA will cease all harassment of Mr. Harrison immediately. Any further legal action will be considered vexatious litigation and subject to sanctions. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. The sound echoed through the chamber. I sat there stunned. Sarah squeezed my arm. You won? I couldn't speak. Barbara stood abruptly and walked out, her lawyers trailing behind her. She didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, the October sun was bright and warm. Leaves were turning gold on the trees lining Main Street. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Sarah smiled. How does it feel? Like I just survived a war? You did. I looked back at the courthouse. Is it over? Sarah's smile faded slightly. Legally, yes, but Barbara's not the type to let go easily. Stay vigilant. I nodded. I'd won the battle. But I had a feeling the war wasn't quite finished. 3 days after the court ruling, I got a notification. Emergency town hall meeting. Emerald Shores Community Center. 7 p.m. Topic: Harbor Safety and Community Standards. I knew exactly what this was. Barbara's last move. If she couldn't beat me legally, she'd turn the community against me. I almost didn't go. But then I thought, if I don't show up, she controls the narrative, so I went. The community center was packed. 200 people, maybe more. Folding chairs filled every row, standing room only in the back. I recognized faces from Emerald Shores, but also boat owners from the marina, local fishermen, small business owners from town. Barbara stood at the front near a podium. Red blazer, blonde bob perfect as always. Microphone clipped to her collar. She saw me enter, her eyes narrowed. I found a seat in the middle, tried to stay invisible. The meeting started. Barbara took the podium. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to discuss a serious issue affecting our community, the safety and integrity of Clearwater Lake. Her voice was smooth, practiced. She painted me as a reckless troublemaker exploiting a legal loophole, a man endangering property values, a threat to their way of life. This individual, she said, not using my name, is using a 70-year-old document to bully homeowners and disrupt our community standards. He claims authority he doesn't deserve, and if we don't act, he'll continue to abuse this power. People murmured, some nodded. I felt the room shifting. Barbara continued, I'm calling on the county to revoke this outdated deed. For the good of our community, for the safety of our families. Applause, not everyone, but enough. My chest tightened. Then someone stood in the back. Bill Davis, one of the older boat owners, retired Navy, quiet guy who kept to himself. Excuse me, he said. His voice was steady. I'd like to say something. Barbara's smile tightened. Of course, Bill. Bill walked to the center aisle. Barbara, I've been mooring on this lake for 20 years. And in that time, I've seen you charge illegal fees, threaten people who don't comply, bully folks off docks their families have used for generations. The room went quiet. Jake's grandfather helped build this harbor. He earned those mooring rights, and Jake's not the problem here, you are. Another voice, Sam the fisherman. Yeah, the HOA's been squeezing us for years, raising fees, revoking permits for no reason. A woman near the front stood. You threatened to kick my son off his slip because his boat wasn't luxury enough. More people stood, one by one, sharing stories of Barbara's overreach, her threats, her greed. The tide was turning. Barbara's face flushed red. This meeting is about harbor safety. No, Bill said firmly. This meeting is about you losing control and you can't handle it. The room erupted in murmurs. Barbara tried to regain control, but the microphone was passed down the aisle. To me, I stood, walked to the front, every eye in the room locked on me. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. I didn't ask for this fight. I just wanted to live peacefully on the lake my grandfather loved. But Barbara decided I didn't belong. She tried to find me, relocate me, tow my home. She smeared my reputation. She isolated me. I looked at her. I'm not your enemy, Barbara. I never was. I turned to the crowd. I'm proposing a solution. I'll transfer harbor master regulatory duties to a community board, elected by all lake residents, fair representation. No one person, including me, will have unchecked power. Silence, then applause. It started slow, then grew. People stood, even some from Emerald Shores. Barbara stood alone at the front, isolated and furious. She grabbed her purse and walked out. The door slammed behind her. Within 2 weeks, the community board was formed. 7 members, elected by vote, representing boat owners, homeowners, fishermen, and local businesses. Fair, transparent, accountable. The board's first act was to review all existing dock permits. Emerald Shores docks were approved after they paid the proper fees and met safety standards. My mooring rights were permanently protected. The illegal fees Barbara had charged were refunded to boat owners. And Barbara, she resigned from the HOA board quietly, no announcement. 1 month later, her mansion went up for sale. By December, she was gone. I heard she moved to Arizona, some gated community where everyone followed the rules. Good riddance. Life on Clearwater Lake slowly returned to normal. The Millers started waving again. Sam invited me fishing. Ted restored my shore power and apologized a dozen times. I should have stood up for you, Jake. You're standing now, that's what matters. The lake felt like home again. One evening in late November, I sat on my deck watching the sunset. The mountains glowed orange and purple. The water turned to glass. Marcus and Sarah came by with beer and fresh-caught trout. We grilled on my deck, laughed, told stories. Sarah raised her bottle. To Jake, who fought the system and won. I shook my head. I didn't fight the system, I used it, that's the difference. Marcus grinned. Still counts as a win, brother. We ate as the stars came out. Later, after they left, I stood alone on my deck. The lake was silent, peaceful. I thought about my grandfather, about the deed he filed, the rights he secured, the legacy he built. He'd fought a war overseas, came home, built something with his hands. And 70 years later, his work saved his grandson. I whispered into the night. Thanks, Grandpa. The wind moved through the pines. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called. I smiled. Spring came to Clearwater Lake like a promise. Snow melted off the mountains. Wildflowers bloomed along the shoreline. The water turned that impossible blue again. I stood on my deck one April morning, coffee in hand, watching ospreys circle overhead. Life had returned to what it was supposed to be. Quiet, peaceful, home. The community board was working well, disputes were handled fairly. New mooring permits were issued without corruption or favoritism. People felt heard. The lake felt like it belonged to everyone again. Not just the wealthy, not just the powerful. Everyone. One afternoon, a young couple approached my houseboat in a small sailboat. They looked nervous. Excuse me, are you Jake Harrison? I am, the woman smiled. We just bought a houseboat. We're trying to get mooring rights. People said you could help. I invited them aboard, showed them my grandfather's old files. Explained the process, walked them through the paperwork. It's not complicated, I said. You just have to do it right. They thanked me and left. As I watched them sail away, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting a way of life. About making sure people like my grandfather, people who built things, who earned their place, weren't erased by money and power. That night, I sat on my deck under the stars. The lake stretched before me dark and infinite. I thought about everything that had happened. The threats, the lawsuits, the isolation, and the victory, not just legal, moral. I'd stood my ground, I'd used the system the right way, and I'd won. More importantly, I'd helped others win too. My phone buzzed, text from Marcus. "Proud of you, brother," I smiled, typed back. "Couldn't have done it without you." I set the phone down and looked at the lake, my grandfather's lake, my lake. Our lake, the wind moved through the pines. Water lapped against the hull. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Because justice isn't just about winning, it's about standing up when it's hard. It's about using the law, not breaking it. It's about protecting what matters and proving that good people can still win. I raised my coffee mug to the stars. "This one's for you, Grandpa." The mountains stood silent, the lake whispered back. And I was home. Sometimes the system feels rigged against the little guy. But this story proves that if you stand your ground, know your rights, and refuse to back down, you can win. Not with violence, not with revenge, but with the law, with courage, and with community. If this story moved you, hit that like button. And drop a comment below, tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to stand up against someone abusing their power. I read every single comment and your stories matter. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be bullied. See you in the next one.